Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Sorry for the one-day delay, but it's finally time for the Broom Wagon. Got a huge show. Nibali's stunning comeback in the Giro. U.S. National Road Racing Championships. More Moto Mayhem. Music, musings, and tweet of the week. All of that coming up on the Broom Wagon. Okay, everybody, let's get into the Giro d'Italia, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the absolutely great Vincenzo Nibali, virtually counted out of the Giro d'Italia with just 2 days in the mountains to go. Nibali went on the offensive immediately in those last two stages, eventually overcoming a nearly 5-minute deficit to secure perhaps the greatest Grand Tour comeback since Greg LeMond's 1989 win in the Tour de France. Nibali counted out of the overall standings, even counting himself out with just a few days to go, but he used the last 2 days in the mountains, which were unbelievably difficult. It's hard to still have the spirit, the morale, the ambition to keep attacking on the last couple of days in the mountains, but Nibali never giving up, never surrendering. And when you have the class and the talent of Vincenzo Nibali and you don't surrender, you have a chance to win no matter how far behind you are. As long as you have some launch pads, you can still win, and that's what Nibali did in the Giro d'Italia, starting with the second to last day in the mountains. Over the Colle Agnello, Nibali goes on the attack, puts the pink jersey wearer, Stefan Kruijswijk, under pressure. Kruijswijk started to get in trouble even before Kruijswijk's spectacular crash, chasing Nibali on the descent of the Colle Agnello. Nibali, not just a great climber, but a great descender as well. Maybe the best in bike racing, along with Peter Sagan, currently racing the professional trade. And Nibali put both Esteban Chaves and Stefan Kruijswijk under huge pressure. 2 days to go in the mountains. It was Kruijswijk that cracked. Esteban Chaves got the pink jersey with one last day in the mountains, but Nibali was not done attacking. Not just a stage win was sufficient for Nibali. He kept on the pressure, kept the attacking going, and eventually Esteban Chaves cracked also on the last day in the mountains, and Nibali got an incredible win. I was a little bit critical of the big stars of cycling after just a few days to go in the Giro d'Italia. And I wondered out loud whether or not Stefan Kruijswijk was the best winner of the Giro d'Italia. That's the best the sport can do. To take nothing away from Kruijswijk, a big star of the future. Kruijswijk has the talent, and now maybe he'll understand how good a bike racer he is, and maybe have a chance to win the Tour de France even. Kruijswijk, great in the time trials, fantastic in the climbs, lacking a little bit of experience and maybe that deep belief in himself. And he lost the jersey with a big crash on the Colle Agnello. But Vincenzo Nibali, big star of the sport, Alejandro Valverde, the two big pre-race favorites, were not as competitive as they needed to be, I thought, with just a few days to go. But Nibali reversed all of that. And for Italian cycling to have such a massive win by Vincenzo Nibali in their Grand Tour, in their home tour, is huge for the sport in Italy. And Nibali delivered the goods for the tifosi, the Italian bike fans, and they went absolutely bananas when Nibali won the Giro. And that will have huge dividends in TV ratings, in sponsorship, and the overall health of the sport in Italian cycling. When you win a Grand Tour, when one of your riders wins a Grand Tour, it doesn't matter what country they're from, whether it's England, Australia, the United States, the sport grows exponentially because of that, and Nibali's win in the Giro d'Italia will be massive for Italian cycling in the years to come. The bad from the Giro. Also some good from the Giro. Let me mention the efforts of Esteban Chaves from Colombia, a great climber, had a chance to win the Giro, faltered on the last day in the mountains, but finished second overall. That's a great result. Nairo Quintana has won the Giro for Colombia in the past, but another huge star of Colombian cycling, Esteban Chaves, being revealed in the Giro d'Italia. Started the last day in the mountains in the pink jersey, lost that to the attacking Vincenzo Nibali, but a great ride nonetheless by Esteban Chaves of the Orica team. The bad Kruijswijk started to get a little bit nervous, got dropped on the Colle Agnello. Now the Colle Agnello, the Cima Coppi, the highest point in this year's Giro. This is the second to last day in the mountains. And he started to get a little bit in trouble. Started to feel the burden, the weight of the pink jersey. No teammates. He was alone. He racing so fabulously throughout the Giro. It looked like going into the last weekend of racing, he was the odds-on favorite to win. But Nibali, not getting that memo, went on the attack. First of all, put Kruijswijk in difficulty on the climb. And then Kruijswijk, knowing how strong, how quick of a descender Nibali is, tried to close that gap. And this is what happened to Stefan Kruijswijk. Getting just a little bit sideways, not concentrating, and horrible visibility. And it gets to the point where the pavement, the snowbank, and the fog, the heavy clouds, look almost identical. And Kruijswijk colliding with the snowbank and going over the handlebars, popped up, bam, immediately. So it seemed like he still was in with a chance. Had to do a long chase by himself. Nibali was up the road. He had hooked up with Michele Scarpone, who, by the way, another good part of the Giro d'Italia, has to have man of the match for the way he rode for his team captain. And Scarpone was just flying up the road with Nibali and giving Nibali enough of a cushion for him to move back into contention. And Kruijswijk had to chase by himself for many miles, consequently got gapped and lost his pink jersey with just 2 days in the mountains to go. That was not, I don't want to say inevitable, but that Giro, the way it was laid out, you had to be so strong all the way until the last day that whoever had the jersey, and it traded hands many times during the Giro d'Italia. It seemed to be a hot potato, very tough to hold. And Kruijswijk eventually not being able to do so. If he had a couple of teammates to help him across between the second to last climb and the last climb on the Friday on that stage, he maybe would have had a better chance to keep his jersey, maybe not would have crashed, maybe not felt so much pressure and nervous and panic trying to chase Nibali on the descent. But what ifs and should have beens are the Hall of Fame of losing. so Kruijswijk rode great, but did not quite have enough to overcome Vincenzo Nibali, one of the great stage racers of all time, one of the few men to win the Giro, the Vuelta, and the Tour de France. I think he's one of 6 guys that have ever done that. Also, the bad, I don't know if you all saw this, but watch Sonny Colbrelli go on the attack and see what happens when he gets a little bit too close to the spectators. Look! Now listen, Colbrelli is maybe going, he hadn't won a stage, desperate to do so, goes on the offensive and blitzes right into the foot of a spectator. But to be honest, to be fair, the spectator is not standing out on the road. The spectator is with the other spectators. And Colbrelli might have hit the curb that he was standing next to him anyways, even if he hadn't collided with the spectator. But he goes in and just lays himself out right in front of the whole peloton. Luckily, he was on a little climb, so the riders had enough time that were directly behind him to get out of the way. And so Sonny Colbrelli falling on his own, that was some of the bad of the Giro d'Italia. Another bad moment in the Giro, Ilnur Zakarin sitting 5th in the overall standings, same descent that Kruijswijk crashed on, and these images are the most frightful in the sport of cycling. An inert rider after a crash at high speed on a descent, unable to move for a long time. Zakarin out of the Giro while he was riding great. And it's quite miraculous that the only thing that he had was a broken collarbone, out of the Giro, but a horrible crash. And that was tough to watch for everybody. Just the helicopter images of Zakharine laid out on the side of the road. He was okay. He will live another day to fight again. So thankfully it wasn't a lot worse than it was. Also in the bad from the Giro final sprint, the Giro d'Italia ending in controversy. A wild ride for the full 3 weeks, but Giacomo Nizzolo, after trying so hard, so desperately, and being so close in all the sprint stages, finally came up with a win. Sadly for Nizzolo, he was relegated by the race jersey for what they believed an egregious movement to his left to block Sasha Modolo and be relegated, giving the win to Nikias Arndt. If you take a close look at it here, you can see that Nizzolo, he does veer from his line a little bit, but this is my take on that. Modolo, no chance to come around. Goes for a hole that's not there. And Nizzolo is doing nothing to move off his line to block the non-existent forward progress of Sasha Modolo. That gave the win to another rider not even involved in that. But the jury, the race jury, has to disregard the wild gesticulations of riders that are losing, that don't have a chance to win. It happened in the Tour of Romandy, and Ilnur Zekurin lost the stage to a Nairo Quintana, and Quintana waved his arms in frustration. And Zekurin was also relegated. It wouldn't surprise me if it's the same race jury. I'm just kidding about the same race jury, but not every rider that's waving his arms has been fouled. And not every rider that's the object of that deserves to be relegated. I believe Nizzolo won the final stage of this year's Giro d'Italia. Let me know what everybody out there thinks also. If you believe that Nizzolo did veer off his line and did block Sasha Modolo, then you agree with the jury. But I happen to disagree with the jury. Let me know what you think. Okay, the good from the U.S. National Road Race Championships. Pretty exciting races. Carmen Small coming up with the win. A surprise win, defeating Kristen Armstrong. Kristen Armstrong, two-time Olympic gold medalist, and going for another win. Why not? Another win in the time trial. But she first needs to be selected for the Olympic team. And hoping to win the National Time Trial Championships was Armstrong, but blocked in that by Carmen Small with a great win for Carmen Small from Durango. Hey, everybody out there in D-Town. Carmen Small, your new National Time Trial Champion for the women. For the men, Taylor Phinney going as hard as he's gone in as long as he can remember. Deep into the pain cave, came up with a nearly minute beating of Tom Zerbel, so a great ride by Taylor Phinney in the individual men's time trial. Men's road race, Greg Daniel, big upset. The Cannondale team bringing three Pro Tour riders, Phil Guyman, Alex Howes, Ben King, and they dominated the proceedings in all the breaks, driving the breaks, but ran out of steam. Alex Howes finished second and was not quite strong enough to overcome a very patient and very clever Gregory Daniel, and he gets the National Road Race Championships. A little bit of a surprise in that. Just 21 years of age, and a great win that he will remember for the rest of his life, and potential World Tour rider in the future. And that win might go a long ways in helping him get into the World Tour, maybe race for BMC or Cannondale or any of the professional teams from Europe. But Greg Daniel, very patient, was active throughout the race, and in spite of the three-man hit squad from Cannondale, Gregory Daniel, domestic pro, winning the National Road Race Championships. In the women, Megan Garnier, whoo, baby, great sprint, just able to beat Corin Rivera. United Healthcare, very strong squad. They perhaps the strongest squad, but Megan Garnier, just too fast. And that is a rider capable of winning in any circumstance, from a sprint, in the hills, on the flats, crosswinds, cobbles. Megan Garnier having her best season to date, and she has already been named to the Olympic team, and she has a great chance to win a medal in the women's Olympic road race in Rio a little bit later on this summer. So congratulations to all the new Stars and Stripes winners, all the new national championships in Winston-Salem, North Carolina last weekend. And the ugly this week, truly heinous, and I cannot believe that the theme of the ugly has repeated itself so many times in this season so far in professional bike racing. Race motos again. Tour of Belgium, stage number 3, an absolutely heinous collision between two motorcycles trying to pass a peloton on a steep descent, coming back into the field after crashing and wiping out no less than 19 riders, including Stig Broix, who, if we recall, I did a video about already at Kuurne, Brussels Kuurne, when he was wiped out by a motorbike, this time much more seriously. He's in a coma. He's had to have 2 brain surgeries to relieve intracranial pressure from swelling and bleeding on his brain, broken eye socket, amongst the myriad other injuries suffered by Stig Broix, still in a coma. So your prayers for Stig Broix, please, should be forthcoming immediately, all of ours. I'd like to quote Christophe Skepperding from the Cannondale squad, who was also wiped out by the motorcycles crashing, and his description of what exactly happened in this crash. We were going 80 kilometers an hour when 2 motos came past us on the left on the bike path. Now, in Belgium and the Netherlands, incredibly advanced countries for bicycle and motor traffic interactions. So, if I'm not mistaken, there's a law in the Netherlands that every road for cars also has to have a corresponding bike path. And all of the times they cross each other's paths are regulated by traffic rules and traffic stop signs and stoplights. Same in Belgium, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're on the bike path, and this is a fast descent, 80 kilometers an hour, you have to ask yourself, this is a bike path for cyclists coming up the hill. So it might not be ideal for going maybe 100 kilometers an hour on your motorbike to get past a peloton that's going 80 kilometers an hour. Bicycles going up the bike path, they can cross at their leisure when the road is clear and are going much slower than you would be going on a motorcycle trying to pass a peloton descending. It happened on a steep descent before you turn right. The bike path stopped and they both slipped on the grass at the end of the bike path, lost control and came sideways through the peloton. Don't tell me that's bad luck. It's just crazy and it has to stop. A number of riders seeing that, being involved in that, and seeing that in the press. Marcel Kittel, Tony Martin, Tom Dumoulin, Marc Sargent, the team manager of Lotto, Koen de Kort, all publicly expressing their dismay at this. And there is a point where bad luck crosses the line into negligence. And where has the UCI been in all of these? They have remained mostly absent. They did make a press release and they reiterated some new rules, but I've read them, and besides stating the obvious, that the UCI is concerned with rider safety, that cars in the entourage, in the caravan, and motor drivers have to pass safely, that's not a clear guideline. It's a very vague, hopeful statement of their rules. So far, there haven't been any penalties in spite of numerous collisions between race motos and the peloton and the riders. I think I might have done a race moto crash with the riders in nearly, if not all of the Broom wagons so far. And the UCI needs to have, and I've said this before, I'm tired of saying this, to be honest with you, and I've not heard from the UCI, and I've asked every time to please clarify exactly how they intend to keep the riders safe. Stig Brooks, you just can't imagine that it's only bad luck. Some of the comments from the riders suggest that the sport is risky enough. Everybody that's driving in and around the sport need to be as cautious and conscientious of rider safety as they humanly are capable of. By and large, the moto drivers very competent and absolutely concerned with rider safety. But to have this competitiveness of who can get around the peloton first, who can get a better shot, who can do their job better, that has to stop. That has to come to an end immediately. And it's dismaying that it's dispiriting that the UCI hasn't been more vocal, haven't enforced more new regulations, haven't metered out some real penalties for people that are responsible for this. The race promoters and the UCI have to have the riders' interests at heart in all times and in all situations, so that these incidents, these collisions can be prevented in the future. Tour de France is on the very near horizon. And if we continue to see the same type of interaction between the riders and the motos and the race cars, and this is in front of the whole world, it's going to reflect very poorly on our sport and how our sport treats our riders, how the pros are treated. The UCI needs to meet with all the shareholders, team representatives, race promoters, and the officials and come up with some concrete solutions. I've suggested a number of modifications in the past, including but not limited to passing distance, timing of passing, and passing speed. Maybe most importantly, the speed by which the motos get past the peloton. Until the UCI does that, studies the problem, and that should have been in the works for many years. Race bikes, racing motorbikes, and the cyclists have been in close proximity since the beginning. And now we've pushed it so far that we're at critical mass, and the UCI has been dismal. This is a real failure in their leadership, and Brian Cookson promised change, and I can't wait for some of that change to come to fruition. So Brian Cookson, I've asked you before, now I'm begging you, please lead the sport in the right direction. All right, everybody. Next up, the Musette Musings. Vincenzo Nibali is the object of this week's Musette Musing. Out of his contract. His contract expires at the end of 2016, and Vincenzo Nibali has been recently linked to a Bahrain Cycling Project being put together by his agent, Alex Carrera. His current team, Astana, he just delivered a massive win in the Giro d'Italia. Before that, when it looked like Nibali was not going to win the Giro, Astana was completely disinterested in re-signing him. But now that he has, they've changed their tune, saying they would like to have Nibali on the team next year. Nibali's teammate, Fabio Aru, won the Vuelta, a little bit younger, up-and-coming star still, even though he's well established as the winner of the Vuelta. He is the team leader for the Tour de France. Okay, Fabio Aru is going to lead Astana in the Tour de France. If Aru wins, I don't think the negotiations with Nibali will go very much further, and they might need the extra budget to keep Fabio Aru around for a while on their roster. So, very complicated situation. He's had an oftentimes contentious relationship with the team manager, Alexander Vinokourov. Vinokourov was following the Giro, and when it seemed like Nibali was not going to win, when he was not racing well, when there was a lot of tension within the team, when Nibali had lost time a couple of days in a row, Alexander Vinokourov left the race, and then Nibali made an incredible comeback and actually won the Giro. So whether or not their relationship is solid, whether or not Astana is sincere in hoping to re-sign Vincenzo Nibali. It might not matter if this Bahrain cycling team comes to fruition. A lot of times in professional cycling, it's been very difficult for teams to get off the ground. We saw with the Alonso Cycling Project that had already laid out their business model, had contracted or at least contacted a number of professional athletes. Paolo Bettini to be the team manager, and a lot of riders were linked with that program. It fell through, so it happens pretty frequently that teams fall through even after they generate big headlines early in the summer. So if Bahrain is another one of those examples, it's this continuing disaster in professional cycling. 100 riders plus on the market for next year. Because of the collapse of the Tinkoff squad and the Iam squad, Vincenzo Nibali might not be able to realize his full value as an athlete. He's won 4 Grand Tours. He's been on the podium 7 times in Grand Tours. Still has a lot of wins left in his legs. But whether or not he can find the right team is questionable. And no other sport has to go through that. The big superstars of any other big sport in the world don't have to worry about whether or not they can get a job. They worry more about how much they're going to get paid, not whether or not their team's going to leave them off the roster, especially when they're winning big like Nibali is. So our business model still needs to evolve and develop for a long ways. It's disheartening that Vincenzo Nibali has to find a new team, bring in a new sponsor at this point in his career. If it happens, great, but I would not count those chickens before you've sold them on the open market, before you've gotten their weight in gold back. Nibali, obviously a great cyclist, one of the most exciting bike racers on the planet. And how bad is it that his team may not have enough money to pay him or has not provided him a 100% nurturing environment, and he wants to leave? I mean, that's not unheard of, but to have nowhere else to go is pretty strange. No other sport has to do that. If you're a great soccer player, a football player, or basketball, baseball, hockey player, you write your own ticket. So cycling has a long ways to go, and Nibali, his contract negotiations will be very interesting, and it's going to be a big part of the future of professional cycling. What happens to Vincenzo Nibali, where he races next year, and what he goes through is going to be the cliff notes on cycling's business model. The big 4, those are the 4 riders that are consistently considered pre-race favorites for any Grand Tour that they enter. That's Chris Froome, Nairo Quintana, Alberto Contador, and Vincenzo Nibali. Froome, solid at Sky, just done a contract extension. Quintana, solid at Movistar. Contador was going to retire at the end of the year, especially with the collapse of the Tinkoff squad, but now he's saying he would like to race again and has been linked to Trek Segafredo. They lose Fabian Cancellara, and it would be a great coup to get Alberto Contador in their numbers, especially if he wins the Tour de France this summer. If I'm Trek, I want a GC rider. Contador's serious. I might sign him before the Tour because he'll be a lot more affordable if he does go on to win the Tour de France. And it would be a real coup if Trek got one of Specialized preeminent riders on their roster. So watch for that intrigue to unfold as the summer goes on. But as far as Vincenzo Nibali is concerned, if he does find a new sponsor to bring into the sport, more power to him. But better would be if he had a long-term, guaranteed, satisfactory place to race and live, have his management team, have his teammates that he likes the most, and not have to worry about being co-captains or having a rival on his own team. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of that plays out. But the bottom line is, our business model needs to improve in leaps and bounds for our sport to move forward. All right, everybody. Now it's time for the tweet of the week. Before I describe the tweet of the week that comes to us again from Frank Schleck, or maybe for the first time, I probably should tell everybody what happened to my forehead. I travel a lot. Oftentimes I'm disoriented when I wake up early in the morning and it's pitch black, and I've been on the road consistently, as I have been my entire adult life. Jeff Pierce, teammate of mine, tried to calculate in the early 90s how many hotel rooms we had stayed at so far in our lives. So for the first 10 years of being on the road, we were in different hotel rooms. We calculated about 250 to 275 nights per year. Baby! That is 2,500 to 3,000 hotel rooms in the first decade. It has been a number of decades since then. I'm closing in on 10,000 hotel rooms, okay? Recently, disoriented, woke up early to get to the airport, went to the bathroom, hadn't turned the lights on yet, like a moron, because my eyes were nowhere near ready to adjust to the light. And I plowed right into the door jamb, walking back to get dressed to leave for the airport. So it stung. Not maybe because it was that painful, but because I was still about 85% asleep. So I've fallen down stairwells, I've crashed my head through walls. So this one, all things considered, pretty minor mishap, but that's why I have this shiner right now. Frank Schleck, this is his tweet, "Oh, sheep." Taking a look at it, you know, all kinds of traffic furniture out there, including when you're training, once in a while, a herd of sheep in the road. Pretty big herd of sheep too. Lamb chops, anyone? Just kidding, just kidding. Maybe some sheep's milk cheese is sufficient. Okay, everybody, that's it for the Broom Wagon this week. Thanks for your thoughts. Thanks for your suggestions. Please keep the comments coming. The subscriptions are absolutely essential. Thanks for the thumbs up. I need more of those also. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Until next time. So, what does it say when you ask any athlete to choose between their freedom of speech and racing in the Olympics? It's horrible. And this is not a poorly worded statement. This is not a poorly constructed sentence.